once Palmerston had booked the movie for December 2nd, I was like, well, we filmed it in Listowel mostly, so I was like, you gotta beat that by a week and make sure we commit to the. And I fly to Italy tomorrow, so I was like, we have to make it tonight, and so it was a bit of a last minute thing, but I'm glad it worked out. And yeah, so we're gonna do like a little. If any of you guys are interested, I'm certainly gonna come up and have a little question and answer talk back after the movie, but. I try not to say too much beforehand, but we love filming here, and I was really glad that we could come and launch this initiative here. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the movie, and stick around afterwards, and feel free to ask questions or gently throw tomatoes, either way. Gently. Okay, enjoy the movie. Thank you. This is the first screening we've had outside of a film festival, so you guys are like the first, official, public audience for the film outside of a festival screening. So I don't know. I mean. It's funny. I'm normally spoiled at film festivals and stuff. There's someone that moderates, so I think and ask questions or like I usually just have to show up and answer things. So introducing myself, I'm terrible at. So friend Evan, who was in the film as well, has agreed to help in case people don't ask questions or whatever. But any questions, comments, thoughts? Evan, you want to ask anything or moderate discussion?
Is there anybody that has a question that wants to start?
Certainly held our attention.
Well, that's good.
I'm glad I didn't walk into a room of you sleeping. It was nice.
Will it come out? Will it be on DVD?
It will, yeah. DVD will come out probably around, I don't know the exact date, probably like May, June. Like it's going to come out in cities across the country in, I don't know, again, like the dates, but it's February or February, March, or it'll run in that kind of area. And then usually it's always 2 to 3 months after that when they put it out on DVD pay-per-view. You can actually watch it on Air Canada right now, funny enough. I was like, I don't know, it's on Air Canada. It hasn't even played in theaters yet. I find it absolutely bizarre and was not my doing. But so I guess if you really want to rent the movie, you can go buy tickets on a flight somewhere and watch it.
What flight is it playing on?
I don't know. I just flew to LA and I was like, what's so funny?
Nova Scotia.
Yeah, it's Nova Scotia. I think it's on all Air Canada flights. But oddly enough, and maybe they thought, for whatever reason, there's like a behind-the-scenes photo. When I shot the movie, I grew a giant beard. And it was a photo of me and Peter, the lead actor. But if you click on it on Air Canada and you want to see the movie, the still that it's normally have a bunch of the actors, it's a picture of me and Peter. And I was like, did they just think I was like some bearded actor in the movie? But like they completely messed up by what was meant to be like my director headshot. That's like the main photo that you have to pick to watch the movie. But a very tangential anecdote. But any other?
Do you have a distributor?
We do that. There's a small company called Kino Smith, based out of Toronto. There was a big logo that was up at the front. So they're handling the city stuff. We're sort of debating because it's not normal. It's not a standard approach to try and release movies in sort of smaller towns before cities. And again, partly because I don't know. It's just the sort of title, subject matter, the fact that a bunch of sort of my friends. When I was actually editing the movie, a lot of sort of my friends who I would sort of invite over to give me feedback on as I was cutting it happened to all be from small towns, and which I just sort of they responded really positively in a way that just made me think, you know what I mean? Like I think it's so hard because you release a movie in a city and there's like unless you have like millions of dollars to spend in marketing, you're competing against such a large volume of like. You know what the funniest thing was on the box office thing was like the number of X's for our movie versus Harry Potter. I could never do that in Toronto, right? Like I could never beat out Harry Potter, but I did in Listowel. Yeah, we photographed the little ticketing sheet. I'm gonna make that the movie poster, like Harry Potter. But there's something actually kind of interesting about you try and it's a little when there's a less theaters and stuff like that. You can sort of it's easier to try and sort of potentially get your word out a little easier, but obviously there's a lot you got to work a lot of effort to. Because we're doing this across the country. There's a lot of effort involved, but at the same time, you make a movie and you want people to see it, and you want people to see it in theaters. And we spent so much time trying to shoot it in this big widescreen format. It seemed a shame for us to just have people, I don't know, like illegally downloading the film and only ever watching it this big. So we really want people to be able to see it in theaters. But that was a tangent, and I can't remember my point was. But next question.
How are the reviews? Like you're in Toronto?
Yeah, we printed it. It's funny, the international reviews have been like, stellar. I mean, from a business point of view, there's a magazine called Variety, which is it's the big American like entertainment one not from a like entertainment tonight, kind of from like the business point of view. Like we got arguably one of the like best possible reviews we could get, and we'll sort of see what that ends up meaning from a sales point of view. Because we obviously we're the next step obviously is for us to we want to do Canada, but we're selling in other countries, but the U.S. because of its size is a really important place to try and get the movie sold. And we've had one offer, but it wasn't really much of an offer. It was, so anyway, we're working to build that, so we can start getting some of the international press like that. But no, they've been. I'd say they range from like good to excellent. So
I'm not sure if Cannes has been yet, but are you planning on doing Cannes soon?
no, I mean they're all very proprietary. Like there's, arguably there's like the 5 biggest film festivals in the world, which is really like Cannes, Berlin, Toronto, Sundance, and you can argue about what the other ones are. But once you've done one, they all want world premieres. So like once you've done one, you can't really do the others. I mean, if I was Steven Spielberg, it's a different story. But like if you're a smaller film, you have your world premiere at one, and then you can play a bunch of the still very important. Like tomorrow we leave for Italy for this really prestigious festival in Torino, which is in the north of Italy, which basically for us means a free flight to Italy. But you do have to kind of pick your battles, and in many ways, like because I'm from Toronto, playing Toronto, and my first movie premiered in Toronto, it's tricky because on the one hand it's like it's very big and important, but from a world point of view, but when it's your hometown, you can get looked over pretty easily. So like next time, I think we definitely want to do just somewhere else first, because it's Canadians can sometimes not look too fondly on their own a little, or easily look elsewhere in terms of
The Leafs.
yeah. But everybody loves the Leafs. The Leafs games sell out. If half the people that came to see Leaf games came to see my movie, I'd be rich. They pay like $200 a ticket.
I believe this
Are you
gentleman has a
really
question.
thinking of doing a zombie horror next? I read that somewhere.
It's not. I don't know. I'm not doing a zombie movie. I am doing a horror movie.
A horror, okay.
But like, I really like, because I don't actually really like horror movies, but I did like the idea of like I tend to like very sort of like authentic sort of character work, and I really like the idea of doing a scary movie that happens to be like, just for me, like a really real movie that happens to be scary as opposed to
serious one.
yeah, so it's not zombies, but it's like a movie that happens to be scary, but is portrayed as like a realistic movie with like interesting ideas, and I mean I think like it has something to say, but it happens to be kind of terrifying to watch.
It's just everything seems to be zombie lately. So
Yeah, no, it's not. I feel like I don't know if I was misquoted, or but I did feel like I saw that somewhere, and
Yeah.
it was incorrect.
Okay.
But hey, zombie
Why
movies are
not?
popular, which means maybe someone will be more interested even if it's a lie.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Back there?
I just want to comment on the music. I really enjoyed it. And subtle things like the airplane flying over, just those like heightened things I really enjoyed.
Oh, thank you. I mean, the band. The band that did most of the scores is this Toronto band called Bruce Peninsula. They're really great, and actually, he's here somewhere. My close friend Andrew Penner did the organ stuff. He did a bunch of the score for my first movie, and then did the organ stuff with that. I mean, because the movie's so sparse and there's the amount of sound and stuff. It's funny that you point that out. Like, something as subtle as an airplane really become when you don't add a lot of stuff to it, when it's so quiet and you add something like that, it starts to be very noticeable. Even if it speaks volume, so all of those are very intentional. I worked with some really great sound guys that helped sculpt all those elements to piece together the whole. But it was funny. He said he normally does, the guy who did a lot of the sound mixing for this movie does like mixing for like huge Hollywood blockbusters, and he said it's actually sometimes easier when you've got like constant gunfire. It's a lot easier to mix, because if there's bad dialogue, you can just sweep it under the gunfire. But when there's nothing, it's like if you start hearing really interference, or if it doesn't sound quite right, you notice it a lot more. So he felt he had a harder time mixing this because it was generally so sort of quiet and sparse than if it had been a car chase movie.
I came to see Mark pulling the body out of the lake. I missed that.
Well, it's funny, this movie, the movie changes a lot as I sort of, because I'm the writer, director, and editor, and each of those are very sort of, for me, separate personalities. So as I, what I wrote versus what I directed versus what I edited just completely changed. The end of the movie was completely different what I wrote. And then by the time I'd cut it, I was like, it didn't really reflect what I felt the spirit was, but there was the ending that we created, I felt was much more in keeping with the spirit of the movie. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like sometimes, like, you know, if it's a, you know, it's like I don't know, it's like making a recipe, but you don't know what half the ingredients taste like, and as you're putting them together, you're like, you know what? No, that's just not a good idea. I'm gonna get rid of that. And Ed, the writer, doesn't actually know what he's talking about half the time, so I just have to kind of like look at it as a whole and say, this is what we have, and I'm gonna sculpt it into what I think the movie is. So there's, you know, it's funny. A couple of my friends who, you know, had a couple of, you know, sizable scenes in the film that are not in the film. Actually, Jackie Burroughs, who played Olive, the older woman, and this was actually her last role, because she died a couple months ago, and I cut that scene down heavily, but after I found out she died, and especially when I found out her was her last role, I really want to, she was so good, I want to put it together, at least for the DVD, a full cut of the scene, just to, or I even was just going to like email her family and just be like, I wanted to show you the full cut of the scene, just because, she was so, I thought, remarkable, and I didn't, it wasn't that I was cutting it down because of her. It had nothing to do with her performance. It was just like the amount of space it's taking up in the movie just felt, I feel like after, I don't know, however long it was, I've accomplished everything I could accomplish. So let's just move on for the story. But, you know, when it's, especially when it's her last role, I'd love to be able to, like, especially just for her, like, you know, family, to be able to say, like, you know, celebrate what she did.